G'day and welcome again to another Campfire Project discussion with, first of all, we've got John Hope, who is a life and business strategist. How are you, John?
I'm good, thanks, Alan. Hello, and hello to everyone else not sitting on a cushion.
Behave. Well, I'm not going to tell people what's going on here, but just move on, Alan. And then we have Pauline Crawford, who's the CEO of Corporate Heart International. How are you, Pauline?
I'm really, really good, and I'm very excited to be with you guys tonight, whatever it is.
Because you're actually in LA. Sorry, not Las Vegas, is it? Or Los Angeles?
Las Vegas, so it's my evening. It's 9 p.m.
That's right. So that would be the day before us. So, yeah, excellent. Yes. And then we also have Scott Carson, who is a men's coach and host of the Sunday session. How are you, Scott?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Alan. Thank you for having me on again. I'm interested to get into today's conversation. Nervous, but interested.
And it should be a really interesting one because Pauline's suggested that the subject for us, and that's about creating our future together. If we each had a magic wand and could create a world that embraces all of our needs and wants and desires, what would our ideal world look like, sound like, feel like, and how would people behave? So, Pauline, I'd love you to explain the question, what you were looking to understand, because I know you've been asking this question of the women, and now you were looking at, well, what's the men's approach to it?
Yeah. Okay, so where this comes from is my passion to make the world a better place. And I see that we're always dealing with the present, which we need to, and we're always trying to sort out things that have happened in the past that are controlling the present or whatever it is. And so I started looking at what if we imagine our future, and what about the discussion we have with that so that we could paint a picture, and women paint the picture, men paint the picture. And to take it further, I'm going to look at getting the baby boomers to paint a picture and the millennials to paint a picture, for Americans to paint a picture and the British. I mean, there's lots of combinations, but the goal is that if we paint a picture of a future that we can individually imagine, and then we can discuss as a collective, then we can look at all those pictures and start saying, okay, there seem to be some similarities or essences that are important. Then we come to the present and say, okay, what steps do we need to get there? It's like, what do you call it? Re-engineering. It's like they say, to get to the moon, they started with the moon and worked backwards to the earth. So why don't we start from the future? It's like that film, Back to the Future. But I started talking about this, and in fact, in my own work in Corporate Heart, it's what I did in my research to understand a well-organization. I painted a picture of an entirely well-organization. Then I invited people to judge their current workplace to that, and that's what my research was about. So with this one, I gathered together a group of women. There were 6 of us, and I got the themes that we came up with here. But I'm not going to tell you what they are. Because my gut feeling is that we would come to this question differently. And so I want this opportunity to ask you, men, what would you put in that future? And then if we explore that for a bit, then I'll share with you what the 6 themes were and how that came to be in that particular session. Is that okay with you guys?
That's brilliant. That'd be great.
Remember that the rule is that it's totally your imagination. It doesn't, you can't stop and say, well, that wouldn't happen. Because in this picture you paint, anything is possible.
Excellent.
Okay. So who's going to start?
John, because John's had more years of
No, Scott, you studied and shit, man. Come on. Pass off on me. Fair dinkum.
That's about, you know what? I will go first. I will. I'll say how we go.
I know.
I tried to handball it, but anyway. Right. So if I could create my perfect world, it'd be a world that challenges all of our potential. And because I believe that if you're not challenged and you're not trying to work through things, are you really living? So sit down and work through accomplishments. You know, like we want to live in a world that allows each other to complement each other without fear of upsetting somebody, because that's something that I find in my life. I love nothing more than putting a smile on someone's face and just in receiving that back. But when you tell someone that they look great, these days it's not accepted. So, you know, I want to live. At the moment, I think men are doing an amazing job. I think we're really lifting the bar in the aspect of we're becoming much better fathers than previous generations. We're being much more considerate at home. I think that's something that I think men need to be appreciated more for. I think that's something that is really important to me, that family unit, that when a man's really putting the effort in, and most of us don't know how, we've had to walk through it and try and find a way. So I'd want to live in a world where that's accepted, noted, and appreciated. You know, I want to live in a world where.
Hey, none of this reading for notes, all right?
Okay.
Keep your eyes up. None of this. That's cheating.
Oh,
It's not an open book exam. Pauline didn't say at any stage it was an open book exam.
I got
okay.
given homework.
It's a world where Scott can be that, whatever he wants.
It's you know, like, I appreciate that, John, but I had to go through my notes because I was very scared.
No, I'm only playing, mate. You're right.
Um,
I'll allow it, even if Pauline won't.
So I'm going to continue on because I want to get it out, because then we can talk about it. But I want to live in a world where, and only recently have I been able to accept that I can, is to tell my mates that I love them with my heart. To tell another woman that I love her. And for her to understand that that's not me coming on to her, that's just me telling her, I love you with all my heart, and the best way I can do that is be here for you. You know, because I'm a firm believer in team. Together, everybody achieves more, and that's a big value to me. So I want to see a world where, you know, we actually work together to achieve more. What you're doing, Pauline, about getting magical conversations going on, this is one of them. You know, like the more we talk together, the more we learn from each other. Campfire for me has been one of the most amazing things I've ever been a part of, and I wish everybody could listen to every conversation that's on here, because I do, and I tell you, my growth is amazing because of it. I want to live in a world where there's trees. I've often walked the planet. I walk around and I look at paddocks and I see farming. I see all this industry. I wonder what it would be like before we got here and cut it all down. I walk out to the Ada tree out the back of Merbu North. It's a 400-year-old tree. It's stunning, you know, and I just sit and adore it. I want to live in a world where we appreciate those things. We spend time with those things, where people are more important than anything else. You know, nature's important. There's a movie by the name, that's 2040 by Damon someone. Can't remember. I should get back to it. That's a great movie, because that's a future I want to live in, where we have sustainable farming, where we consider our environment. You know?
Yeah.
But most importantly, I want to live in a place where we respect each other. And that's the number one thing for me. I want to see that. I want people to sit and respect each other enough to hear what somebody has to say, to know somebody. Yeah, so that's my world.
I'm going to cry. I think that's wonderful. Follow that one, John.
Hang on, isn't it Alan's go?
We're all looking at you, John.
Yeah, no, that's it. I think that's an important thing. Like all of the things that Scott's talking about, that's love and appreciation and joy and happiness and all that sort of stuff. And you got to have that. You got to strive for that. But you can't appreciate all of those things if you don't have hardship. You know, so many people get this idealistic approach that, I wish I didn't have the hardship. The hardship is your growth. That's actually more important. It's your journey from the hardship to the joy that is most beneficial for you. That's where your growth happens. I think we're getting to a world where that isn't happening. Like I know from getting out of the police, it was more promoting narcissistic behaviour than empathetic behaviour, as far as adult, like this no pass and fail and all this sort of stuff where we're overcompensating. And if someone wants to put in the work, then they should get credit for it.
So but if you go to the future though, John, is that the world you want?
No, it's not. I'm more saying that's, I think, the world we're going to. You know, it's and it's impersonal, which is all against love. It's all it's more systematic. Everyone's trying to get the systems. McDonald's was the first system. Everything's trying to copy McDonald's and do their system. Like, yeah,
but what would you like the future to be if you could imagine it different, John?
Less systematic and more about love and caring for one another. Same as Scott said. More about being an example. You know, like not wishing away hardship. You know, hardship's important. I'm a father of two boys, and I want to be an example for them because kids gain their strength, and that's what we're put on this planet to do, is to move forward, and the future generation's got to be better than the last generation. And they can't do that if they're not gaining strength and guidance from you. And if you don't provide the right example, they're not going to get that anywhere else. So your parents are your main teachers. Schools are already getting systematic. So, I know it sounds bad. I'm all for bringing back the cane. Because with the cane, it's not the fact of getting the cane. It's the boundary that you create. If you do this, this will happen. Kids respond better than that. Not all kids, but some kids that are, because we're all different. But some kids react different to it. You know, I'd be more. I think we could take more of a lesson from the last generation. Not so much as far as parenting, because I think, like Scott said, men need to be more nurturing, you know, and that's generic. But you also got your masculine energy and that sort of stuff can't be hampered as well, because we got masculine and female energy. If we were the same, we'd use the same toilet, use it the same way. But we don't. I think we said that last time, Pauline, didn't we? But
so can I ask you then, John? Is that if you were looking at the future, is that, if I paraphrase what it says, is a world where there is some discipline?
Not so much discipline, more less generalisation. You can't treat every situation the same way. Everyone's different. So I think there needs to be some common sense. I'm more about, and I'm not discipline, but discipline's one of the areas, but also understanding and male and female energy, and they are different, but you've got to get an understanding there. And I'm like, one of the big things in the police is domestic violence. I'm the biggest advocate against domestic violence there ever is. And, I could tell you some stories where I've taken it into my own hands to make sure it didn't happen. So I'm not saying that side of the masculine, female, and feminine energy is a good thing. It's more trying to get an understanding, an education, and let's evolve so that we can get past those things.
Yeah.
But we can't have that shut door. Like, you can't just go, that didn't work. Like, you got to fix it, or provide some common sense. But we're in a society now where if you say something, you put your head in the chopping block and it gets knocked off. So you need to be. So
we want a world in the future where we don't get chopped off on the chopping board. We want a world. You're saying that we want a world where we can be examples and share the hardships and be an example. Be
examples, share the hardships, but also not be categorised. Everyone's the same. No one's the same. And I'm not talking male and female. I'm talking males or females. We're all different. Even if all males are different. You've got different personality types. You've got different. So it's more understanding that instead of trying to undercut it, because
Yeah.
we're losing our growth as a society. Like we're trying to categorise everyone into one category, and you can't do it. You can't. It's like putting a square peg in a round hole. You know, a square peg goes in a square hole, a round peg goes in a round hole. We used to know that. We don't know it anymore.
Yeah.
And the
So
education.
it's more understanding, and it's more
Accepting.
sharing
And accepting.
and accepting.
Not accepting bad things, but accepting that people are different.
Yes.
I don't know, is that answer your question?
Mm.
Did I
Yeah,
do
yeah.
Because I wasn't referring to my notes, Scott.
No.
Oh,
Well,
I'm lying, I was. It's
Yeah.
there.
Well, what's lovely is that it's a very different energy about what you're saying to what Scott's saying. So let's find out from Alan, what does the future look like?
Okay, well, one of the key words that Scott said was respect. That's one of the things I feel we lack today, which I'd love to see come back in. Not only respect for each other, but also for respect for ourselves as well.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that there is such a thing as utopia, because if we had that utopia, I think it would be hell. We need to have, as John has said, we need to have some adversities, because this is what we grow from. To be able to be in a society, though, where we accept that those things happen, and instead of jumping on somebody, show that bit of respect, spend some time. Abbreviations is another thing I really hate. We abbreviate everything. We try and shortcut everything, get to a solution as fast as we possibly can. And the end result is, in that rush, we're not finding out, we're not sitting down, and as you said, magical conversations, sitting down with somebody and truly understanding where they're coming from, what's happened around it, why they did what they did. Respecting that bit of space so that we can then find out more information before we make a judgment and rush in and make changes, or try and make changes, which generally the only change it makes the situation worse than what it was.
Yeah.
We're too big a hurry. I'd like to see a world that slows down a little bit and we spend a bit more time with each other and understanding each other. And that way, because you're asking this question of women, you're asking it of men. Well, I think if we actually stopped and we started talking to each other in a more meaningful way, we would have a better understanding of each other immediately. And I think we'd find a lot of similarities in what we're looking for.
Yes.
And it'd solve a lot of issues straight away. But that was one of the main things for me, is like relationships are built on respect. People only do business with you if they know, like, and trust you. All of this comes back to understanding somebody. And the more we do that, we'd have a better society. Things like the cane and things like, well, one of the things is with helicopter parenting, which I truly believe is a version of child abuse, because you remove all the boundaries from the child. Child doesn't know where to go. If a child doesn't have boundaries, they get lost. And being a helicopter parent is all about protecting the child. No, it's about you feeling, as a parent, feeling better about yourself and thinking everybody else thinks you're a good parent. The child is the one who gets neglected in the process. So for a child needs boundaries. They need to know that with cause and effect, if you do this, this is going to be the result of that, whether it be good or bad. Do a good thing, you get a good result. And so we need adversity for our growth. We need those challenges. And we need a system that respects people long enough to find out, well, what's going on before we jump in. Because in social media now, somebody makes a comment and all of a sudden you've got two sides with millions of people on both sides having a go at each other. If we stopped, gave a bit of respect for each other, hesitated, asked a few questions. It's like one of the rules on the campfire has always been, if you don't agree with the other person, then you turn around and you go, well, explain to me more about that so I understand where you're coming from. And in that, you either understand more yourself, so you can say, oh, that person has got a point, or in that conversation, the other person might go, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be thinking that way. Maybe I should think this way instead. You don't get those solutions when you're demanding from somebody else that they change. I think it was John, you said the other day on one of the panels that, you know, somebody who's forced to change their mind is still of the same opinion.
Yeah.
And so
convinced against their wills of the same opinion still.
Yeah.
That's it. So if that's the case, then we can't. So the other person stops talking. We think, oh, well, one, no, we haven't. We just created a bigger chasm between us. You need to stop, listen, and talk to the other person. As I say, you've got one mouth and two ears. Well, you've also got one mouth, two ears, and two eyes. So the proportion should be eyes and ears together before you put the mouth in thing. So you into gear. So you find out more information, because the non-verbals tell us everything about somebody, more so than their words. If somebody's saying something, but we pick up something's going on, we don't really trust what they've said, even though what they've said sounds great. That's because we picked up non-verbal. So what we hear and what we, just in the tone of voice and what we see in their non-verbals, that's where the real truth is. So start focusing more on that before we start responding with our own, well, this is what it should be. Explain to me, tell me more about where you're at, why you believe that. Let me understand where you're coming from.
Yes.
And that way, as John has said, there's no two people on the planet who are identical. As I say, 7.7 billion people on the planet at the moment, there's 7.7 billion different personalities.
Yes.
And so everybody has a different viewpoint, and we only grow when we stop, listen, and watch what other people are doing and take that knowledge in and go, oh, yeah, I can see that. I can see how I can adapt that to what I'm doing. Or I can make a few suggestions here that may also add to what they've already known. And you only do that when you respect the other person. So respect is at the front end of everything I look at.
I think at the age too, experience too, like where you get Asian and Aboriginal communities, they respect their elders. Caucasian communities don't.
Yeah,
you know,
we've lost that.
And if you like I know you've had a bit to do with Aboriginal communities, Alan, so have I, and they respect their elders. And so if someone's lacking in a certain thing, instead of chastising them and getting up and go, well, you go and spend time with this person to learn a little bit about that, because everyone's got different skills. We all have a different journey. And if you're lacking in something, and you got someone who's a bit older and you respect them, they can direct that. And we definitely lose that. And that's a problem with civilization, I think. Civilization has done that. It's made us more stress. Like stress is a civilization disease. It doesn't appear in
tribal
people that aren't in tribal things and things like that. So it's bloody interesting topic, Pauline. I've got to tell you.
Well,
quite a few things come up out of this.
Well, it's very interesting listening to you guys. I mean, there are a lot of themes that came up with the 6 women, which I'm going to share with you now. But I think what you said, Alan, is really important. And one of the keys in a magical conversation, structurally, is that there is no call to action. And, I remember talking to HR audience, and they go, how can we do that? What about our KPIs and all that stuff? I say, well, you time it. You have a time in which you could go endlessly, but say if you said, right, we're going to have a magical conversation for 2 hours. In that time, you're not allowed to take any actions, because you're seeding the contributions from everybody. And of course, some people find it difficult to wait that much time because they're action oriented, maybe in their personality. But and therefore you make the conversations shorter. You fit into people, but I think the key is that we don't hurry the gestation of a future that we desire, because all of you have said we want a future where we respect each other, we trust each other, we give people space and time, we understand that. And I like what you said, John, about we want to be examples. So it's okay to have had hardships, but not to drown ourselves in hardship, actually use them as examples. And therefore that's what I wanted to ask you all was, when you think about that sentence which says, I would like a world that has all these magical things, does it feel good? How does it feel? Does it feel...
Yeah, good. Really good. And
it feels good.
It feels great. But I'm just going to jump on something there. With respect, Campfire is all about we together.
Yeah.
When there's division, it is a tool of control. So, from what I'm hearing, we're all about working together. And that's what's missing in our society. And if we can work together across the ages, because I think that's a big one. I'm like it, and going down to respect, I'm just going to jump over quickly because there's something I did want to say. Women. Al Pacino in Scent of a Woman, when he sits there and describes a woman with that, that's how men love women. Love them. And when you have our heart, There's nothing we won't do. A man can move a mountain with the love of a woman. He can't move a grain of salt when he's scorned by a woman.
Yeah.
I feel respect is something that women don't have for themselves at all anymore through marketing. And it makes it really hard for us to love you. And I can't look. I've just got back from a trip away, and I'm looking at these young women with Botox and eyes all been done up, and these little tiny G-string bloody bikinis, and I'm looking at them going, "Who are you advertising to?" Because no one with respect will see that and be attracted to it. So the marketing ploys and division, they're hurting women. So in my ideal world, I want a woman to respect herself and to love herself. Because one of the most beautiful things you can have in a woman is that cheeky smile of just strength. And it's like, I don't know, I think women are most beautiful things.
I love it, and I know what you're referring to, Scott. I mean, in my work, when I'm dealing with helping women to understand how to be in the world with men, often the woman that they're either very vulnerable and victimy, or they're over aggressively pushy about their sexuality. And I agree, and I'm always talking to women about being aligned and grounded and centered in who they are as a human being, and not as a sex object or as a fiery ball in you know. So I talk to them about that, and I think there is a journey. I think there's a kind of a flip round where women are now starting to realize that they don't need all that, but some women are still doing it. Some women are still behind the veil, and some women are totally naked, and it's about finding that balance. And you know, my journey back into business was through being an image consultant. So I would actually show people in the mirror how colors could enhance them, how clothes could enhance them. And I always say to them, just be yourself, be your own individuality. And I think that's really important. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Scott, because I would love to be in a world where men and women see each other as beautiful human beings. And yes, they fall in love appropriately and whatever. And it doesn't matter what variation that is, but they don't become aggressive about their love and don't become bitchy or controlling, because that actually takes us away from the respect that we're all talking about, doesn't it?
That's it.
That we respect human nature, and we're all different. And that's why I always talk about the value of differences. It doesn't need to divide us. It means that we're part of a beautiful jigsaw puzzle.
Absolutely. And it's our imperfections that actually make us beautiful.
Yeah.
Actually knowing our imperfections and being okay with them that actually make us beautiful. And I think that's something that's really missed.
See, one of the things I love is the work that I do, because it's about helping people with their relationships, which also means that I have to do what I was talking about before. I spend that time in quiet watching and observing. And you can be in a hotel, for instance, or a pub in the afternoon, in the evening, and you can see all the girls that come in skimpily dressed and everything else. And I call them girls regardless of what age they are. But, and the guys looking at them in one way. But at the end, see this one woman who walks in who is comfortable in her own skin and everything else, who is dressed nice and everything else. And I watch the guys take notice, but the difference in their posture, the way they respond when they're looking at the woman, is completely different. It goes from that, which you can see being boys themselves in that moment with the other girls, all of a sudden being, you can see the man in them coming out. And so, as Scott, you said before, that, about, a woman who either can lift you up or, you can't do anything, you've been scorned. And that's virtually what's happened. The women don't realise how powerful they are. And when I hear women say, well, we want equality, I go, well, why do you want to give away your power? Because you've already got, if you stop and you look at yourself and what you actually bring to the table, even in a boardroom, is so powerful when you're in your own energy and you're comfortable with who you are. You're not trying to, put on an act or try and behave in a certain way. You don't feel like you got to compete. Just there's, people, there's all these motivational experts out there who will say, fake it till you make it. And I would like to throttle the first person who ever said that and made sure that nobody else did, because everybody is then faking it all the time. And you can see it in the boardroom and in business and everything else. The women who are doing just that. The true statement was act as if. It was like a character act. We would go out and study the part. So when they played the part, so they were playing a psychopath, for instance, everybody thought that person is a psychopath. Because once you act as if, you're immediately there. Whereas if you fake it till you make it, you're never going to make it.
Yeah.
Because you're always faking it. So the woman who is already acting as though she knows herself, she's comfortable and everything else, as soon as she's starting to act as if she is, naturally she is. And all the people around her will notice it, even the other women. You'll notice some of, I love watching the expressions on some faces, because you can see the jealousy start to rise in some of the other women who aren't there yet, and they're looking at her with envy. So for those women to have stopped and taken that time, instead of focusing on themselves and go, I'm not good enough, look and go, well, what is it about her? How's she carrying herself? What can I learn from that? So I know that, Scott, you walk around and you look at people to understand, you want to know, when you sit down and you talk to them, you want to know more about them. If we did more of that, that would make this world so much more perfect. We would be having mistakes. We'd have our, things, our hardships and everything else as they came along, but we wouldn't be out there isolated on our own and getting worse about it. We would have other people who are watching and becoming part of the solution, stepping up and going, right, how can I help you? How can I be of service? What do you want from me? And that person then straight away, when you ask them that way, they feel like they've got some control back. So
I think Scott too brought up about the marketing side of it. And I remember having a conversation with teenage girls probably 10 years ago. They were trying to talk to me about, Madonna, Britney Spears, Miley Cyrus and all that, and sex tapes and all that sort of stuff. And I said, well, and they're going, oh, it's so attractive and sexy. And I've gone, well, from a marketing point of view, and as Scott said, men respect women, but that sort of stuff we don't respect. And I said, it's a basic principle of business. You don't make money giving stuff away. And if you're just throwing it out there, it's like, well, like from a man's point of view, you go, well,
can you repeat?
Repeat what? What did I say? I'm a bloke.
You may have to wait for the recording.
Don't make money giving it away.
Yeah. You don't make money giving stuff away. That's a basic rule of business.
Yeah.
And I said that to them, and they're going, oh, but they're sexy and they're this. And I said, well, it might be sexy to you, but to me, they're one of those words that people don't like to hear.
So is that,
you know what I mean? And women do have strength, like Scott said and Alan said. They don't have it then. They have it prior to then.
Yeah.
So it's and I totally agree. Like, it's so much more attractive with a woman if they're not giving it away. And that's not saying, like a nun or anything like that. But in today's society, like, I haven't been in the police for 10 years, but even in the last couple of years, I had to go to nightclubs and all that sort of stuff on Newcastle on a Friday and Saturday night. The girls wear less to a nightclub than they do to bed. And it's like, you just want to slap them and go, what are you advertising for?
Well,
like,
I have
what do you think you're going to attract?
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think the whole hype of people like Madonna and Miley Cyrus and all this stuff, I totally can't stand. I mean, but there's this real ebb and flow with women. I think I do believe there is a shift going on. Not at all generations; it's different across generations. But I think women have come out, sort of, a lot of women, certainly in America, I've discovered, come out fighting about Me Too, and they've gone into that slightly aggressive, vicious, I can do anything, I can go into the boardroom and breastfeed. I mean, I'm being extreme. And I'm going, just don't do it, like, consider who is around you. It's like, be your unique self, but don't be so much in the face of other people that they don't know how to deal with you. Because as Alan says, and you've all said, but it's all about relationships. It's about relationship with yourself, who you see in the mirror. How do you feel about you? And you can tell when somebody is genuine and when they're not genuine. And it's either fear-based or kind of victim-based, or they get aggressive. And I do think that's one of my journeys with the women that I work with, is to be yourself. And what's fascinating is I very, very often get women say to me, oh, well, you've got to deal with women dealing with women. Because, you know, dealing with men is one thing, and actually it's relatively easy compared to dealing with a woman who doesn't like me.
I'm glad you said that. I'll be ducking and weaving.
Well, you know, and I know that women who watch this may disagree with me, but I've spoken to audiences of women where I come across that point, and, you know, 5% of the audience will go like this, and the rest will go.
But at the same time,
eye contact.
Women are more honest. Men aren't. You can say to a man, like, how you going? Yeah, I'm fine. But meanwhile, the whole world's falling apart. A woman will tell you.
Well, it's interesting you say that, John, because I always say that I think they're much more straightforward and honest with each other. Women are
about actual things, but not emotions. Men aren't honest about their emotions. Women are.
Yeah, well, this is where, when it comes to the emotion side of things, way they might be, but what you can observe, if you know, when you know how to read them, you can see the emotions there, even though they're trying to cover it up one way or another. But as you were saying about the women, you know, you don't have to deal with men. You don't have to deal with other women. When you, as you said, when you are yourself, it takes less energy than any other thing, than being somebody else. And that, who you are, you want to be around people who like being around you. So you can't be somebody else and attract people who are going to like you, because they're going to be the wrong people. So if you are yourself, you'll attract the right people around you. And then you don't have to deal with anybody, because everybody just naturally is getting along with each other, because we gravitate to people who we know, like, and trust. You know, there's personalities that are similar, attract to each other. So if you want to be, you know, your best possible self, just be yourself right now. Act as if you are who you are right now. And which means
I learned something years ago, and they said, like, you've got a circle. You draw a big circle and draw a little circle in between. Now, the little circle represents what you're like in your own head, that no one else sees, how you are in your own head. The big circle represents how everyone else sees you. Now, the more developed you are as a person, the smaller that gap is. The bigger that gap, the harder it is for you to be you. Because you're not being a true version. You're trying to live up to expectations. The minute you resist the difference between those two circles, you grow as a person.
You had said before, Scott, you done what all of us have been told as well, and that was you changed the closest group of people you had around you. Changed those, and that changed your life, because you selected a different group of people. So it's the same thing. There's 7.7 billion people on the planet. Who said we have to change who we are to fit in with the people who are around us? Why not just be who we are naturally and attract the right people to us, so we're using less energy, we're having better conversations, they're more meaningful, we don't have to try and second guess what the other person is saying and how should we phrase this, you know? And that's why I like to see a lot of political correctness out there as well, because I think that's also turned around and marks what we really feel. We've got minority groups saying what the majority should do, which is creating a lot of animosity from the larger groups towards the smaller ones. You know, it's a we together approach. Me to get men to and me to. I just saw as two fighting tribes that weren't going to get on with each other. And if you've got all these different separated groups, nothing's ever going to be resolved. But if we all come together, and the thing that you needed inside the Campfire Project was the right attitude, having the right heart. Forget about gender, forget about religion, forget about cultures, forget about everything else. If you had the right heart, there's a place for you in the campfire. And I think in the campfire then becomes its own world, and the more people come in, the bigger it gets. And eventually, hopefully, that will change the bigger world outside of us.
So what one thing would you do to help someone to get to know themselves better?
I would say to people, first of all, you know the stuff about yourself. Well, first thing, one thing is understanding your own personality as well, because every trait has an upside and every trait has a downside. If you know the downside, you know why you get triggered in different situations. So you know what environment to set up around you. But you don't know how to talk to other people. You can't read them until you understand yourself, because then I need to know, if I can read the other person, how much do I need to change the way I like to be spoken to match the way that they want to be spoken to. It's not changing myself in that process. It's changing the way I communicate, which naturally just brings us together. It circumvents the differences in the personalities to the point that you start to then see the value of the people who are different to you and realise that it's from all the differences that we actually create teams.
And I think the other thing is to recognise that somebody else's difference is their difference, and it's okay. And you might not like it, but that's okay. And the great statement, which is, what you think of me is none of my business. And I really think that is important, because I don't know whether it's more prevalent in women, but it's certainly my experience that, women have been people pleasers in the majority, and they want approval. I know I've spent a lot of my life thinking, well, why do people not approve of me or approve of me? And then I realised in my recent years is that it's okay just to be me. And that, I recently, went back to England for a trip to see my family, and I hadn't been there for 2 years. And there was some, some things that came up, and I just thought, no, it's okay. It's okay just to be me. I can be a world adventurer, traveller, and a grandmother. That's okay, and I can do it in the way that I want it to be, and I don't have to accept everything that's said to me. It's none of my business. It's somebody else's view. So in a world ahead, one of the things that came up with the group of women I was with, and I want to share with you the 6 themes. So there were 6 of us, so there were 6 themes, because women always come up with something different. So this is one of the things to watch, is that when one woman says something, you automatically, as another woman, think, I like that, but I want to do something different. Men often build on what the man's just said, so just think about that. So the first person who started said it was about freedom. So her theme was about the freedom to be creative. So a world in which everybody's natural creative talent was freely acceptable, and that was okay if it was knitting or wood carpenting or whatever different it was okay to be creative. The second person said they wanted harmony between nature and work, which is something you alluded to, Scott. The ability to value nature. So rather than being in a concrete jungle in business, is to always make sure that nature came into it and that we shared time with nature. The next theme was peaceful coexistence, which again you've all alluded to, that peaceful coexistence with a future where we create, for instance, this is what the women came up with, a complete transformation of education, of ways of being and not being at war. That's something that women definitely want in the future. We don't want wars, because we're not natural war makers.
Oars? Sorry, oars. What do you mean by oars?
War.
War.
Oh, raw. Okay.
War.
War. W-A-R.
Oh, war. Sorry. It's the accent. Bloody pommies. Sorry.
Okay. The next theme was a world where there was fierce compassion. And what we meant by that was real collaboration and a very giving back strategy. So being in a world where giving back and paying forward and community engagement was really important. Charitable. Another theme was love and respect for each other, which is something you've all said. And the last one, which was mine, I think, was, and now this was only because I went last, and therefore I had to think of something different to the other 5. That's a very female thing. Mine was a world which was full of harmony and energy. And what I meant by that was a world where we dance more and we sing more and we get around the campfire more. We do more physical things, like, hugging people without them thinking that you're coming on to them,
But that's love, yeah.
That energy. Well,
That's love, isn't it? Like Tony Robbins talks about, he said, like, for a family, the objective should not be peace, it should be love. Because peace comes from love, but love doesn't come from peace.
Love is underpinning everything.
That's
but I
it.
think
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's,
but,
yeah.
a world in which we can hug each other. And I mean, one very small thing that I started, it was actually about the time I split up with my husband, and I've been with him for 30 years. And I did it in the most harmonious way I could, because although I felt the need to part, I didn't want to break us up. That might sound strange anyway. But anyway, I did it in the best possible way. And we stayed friends. But I started writing on all my emails and all my correspondence, and you might have noticed if you had an email for me, I always put smiles, Pauline. And I started it very deliberately because I felt it was a kind of like a word hug. And even now, even if I write a serious email and it says best regards, I still put smiles underneath it, Pauline, because it's almost like a signature. It's like, I don't know, I know guys hug each other more now. I remember when my brothers started hugging each other and hugging my dad before he died. It was the first time they'd done it over several decades, and I thought that's really good, because women hug each other a lot. But to be able to, for men and women to be able to hug each other without it being necessarily an intimate relationship, it's just, its touch is really important. I love dancing. Yeah, I love dancing, and I mean, partner dancing is something we watch on Strictly Come Dancing, and we love it. But do we do it? Because actually, if we all danced and we all held hands more and actually formed a human bond, I think that's where our future peaceful coexistence and love would come from more.
Yeah, it's taken men quite a while to start to move into that. It's probably something that we've always wanted, but at the same time, it was something we were taught that, men shouldn't do. Because, and quite often, if we did, it was taken the wrong way anyway because of that sexual connection. But then, hug a guy, well, there's got to be something wrong there. But there is nothing that feels better when you actually connect with somebody in that level. You're able to put your arms around and give them a hug. All tribal groups, when they meet, there is a physical touch. And it's not just a handshake. The old handshake from the Europe was, if I'm holding your hand with your right hand, that's why it's a right hand, because most people are right hand, you can't stab me or hit me because I got hold of your hand. And it wasn't just a hand, it was the full arm like that, so they couldn't get away. And so that was where that came from. But when you embrace somebody, if you take their hand like that, their hands at the back of yours, and you bring it to your heart, you're going, right, your most dangerous weapon, which is your hand, I've just put it against my heart. So that point, this is what the Indigenous hugs are about. When the handshake, you'll often see the guys do, they'll do that, they'll put the hand there, and they'll bring the guy in. And they hug each other that way. And that is, I've just put my strongest weapon against my most vulnerable part, therefore I trust you. And when men are able to do that, there's all of a sudden there's a releasing of tensions and everything else. And when you're out bush and you might have 50, 60 or even 100 or even more men out there, and you go around and you do that with everyone, my God, by the time you get to the end of it, you've got a different feeling in your heart. It changes you dramatically. So the men who actually get a chance to apply it, that's why the men's groups have been so powerful, because they're doing that. And one of the things is the men are coming away from those going, never had an experience like this before and I loved it. Then they go back to their corporate world, but they can't then wait to get back to the next one. So if we were able to do more of that, gradually men would be gone.
Yeah, in my world in the future now, I want to see that kind of energy in the boardroom. Because we need to shift the energy in the corporate world.
And I love the lady who actually said as well, the fierce compassion.
Yeah.
I love the word, the fierce compassion, because if you're fierce, you're really applied to it. And so it's compassion, not just, I feel compassion for the other person, but it's a full immersion into the feeling compassion with the other person. It's stronger. Yes,
it's stronger. And it's this whole idea, I mean, if any of you have ever done a paying forward, my husband recently went into, I don't know which fast food it was, but he got to the counter and the woman said, oh, the person in front's just paid for you. And it was such a lovely, an invisible handshake. He did it to somebody else. He automatically said, oh, well, I'll do that and just tell the guy behind that I paid for him. Isn't that lovely? You know, so the physical handshake, the hug, the touch, but also changing our words, because so much is done online now, which is vicious and soulless, and people can write awful stuff without ever meeting somebody. You know, people can get into a dire suicidal state because people have written stuff. It's terrible, and there's not even a physical contact. So I think we've got to get back to a world where we understand, you know, smiling, touching, shaking hands will start us shifting away from the world that's been malicious and invasive, and we've gone out and protected ourselves. And that hopefully will bring women past the Me Too movement, because that's my vision as well, a world ahead where we don't have those malicious.
People are too scared to smile these days. People don't smile at each other. And the closer I get to the city with the guys on Sundays, the less people smile. And we're known as the smileys. People see us, the smileys are back. 6 o'clock in the morning, we're running past you, walk past you. Morning, how are you?
But that comes down to your mental state too. Like I had, like I said, I alluded to the other night, I had cancer and I had 8 operations. I had a mastectomy, lumpectomy. They found it had spread. I had chemo, I had radiation. I lost my eyesight, and I had to have lens replaced in my eyes. They'd burnt me too much with the radiation. I had to have liposuction of the arm, which I don't recommend. These people think that liposuction is good. If you like the feeling of cockroaches running up and down the inside of your arm for 6 months, go for it. But the whole time, everyone commented on me that I was smiling, I was upbeat. And I said, that's because it's my choice. Anyone with a victim mentality sits there and goes, I'm not happy because of this person. The only person that can put a smile on your face is you, and the only person that can take it off is you. And it's the same with your mental state. And if you're in a place of fear, which we were talking about last night, if you're down there and fear becomes, you know, the presence, the thing that identifies the presence of fear is anger. So if you're seeing someone that's angry, they're scared. And then that untreated or unaction becomes depression, guilt, anxiety, all those things. But if you start practicing the things that all of the religions and philosophers tell us about, mental health things, and the only person who can do it, you can't take a pill and do it. But if you start practicing joy, if you practice forgiveness, if you practice, which we talked about last night, if you practice gratitude, if you practice hope, charity, as you said, Pauline, like giving, what can I give? Love. What can I do to love this person, love this situation, love myself better? And a lot of it has to do with our own reflection. Is we need to love ourselves better, and you can't get a pill for that. And we're in a society that's trying to teach us, like they've proven that Zoloft, like we all know what Zoloft is. Zoloft takes 6 weeks to have an effect on you. They've already proven that three times a week, if you go for a 30-minute walk, has a bigger effect within a week than Zoloft does in 6 weeks. But pharmaceutical companies can't make money on it.
Well, that's right. And I mean, there's, just so you know, there's something called the Keep Smiling movement, and I'll send a link to Alan. You can post it. But it started with a guy who he's now 80-something, but he had a disease which literally made him a paraplegic, and he was in hospital. And like your story, John, he just started smiling. He's now walking. And he decided he would keep smiling, and everybody would come, the doctors and nurses and everybody would come into his room because he was so smiley. And he started this idea of the Keep Smiling movement. And we just got to keep on doing this because
it is free, and people, it's infectious. You know, not on every single person you come across, but over the whole, it does start to become infectious.
Yeah, well, every thought that we have, every emotion we have creates a chemical reaction. If we've got all the wrong feelings all the time, we know in our body if we're unhappy, we're slumped over, we're happy, shoulders are back, we walk more erect, we've got more bounce in our step. So the chemicals are being created in our thoughts, and they're going to all of our organs, so they're going to be hitting organs. As John said, that walk helps us repair. I was a massage therapist, and all of a sudden, I was getting terminally ill patients, and some of those patients were reversing their conditions. I'd take them through an NLP process. We'd look at things, how could life be better, etc. How would they plan things and all the rest? Put them on the table for an hour, a massage with aromatherapies and everything else, and they're coming back and saying their conditions were starting to reverse, which was where my spiritual journey started, because I couldn't understand it. But what I understood at that point was every thought we have is going to affect us. So if you want to affect and grow and become healthier, change to positive thoughts. And the quickest way to do that, as Scott has found when they go running past people, if they smile at them, those people smile back, their whole body changes. So you can't have a negative thought and feel unhappy or anything else when you put a smile on your face. So if you don't like your life, just find something to actually get a smile going and start to feel the change in your body, and you'll start to realise that the chemicals going through your body have started to change, and that will transform your body and transform your life.
So I think the world in the future should be one where everybody smiles every day, for at least most of the day.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate the power of a smile.
No,
and I think one of the things for me in this idea of creating our future together and creating our future now is that just by thinking about the future in this way, in a way that is positive and possible, it becomes probable. So it's what we, so if we start the morning by saying the world I would really like to have around me is, and sharing that with people, asking people just, what would you like if you had a magic wand? And I often use that. Is I say to people, okay, whatever the situation, if you had a magic wand, what would you like now? Because the magic wand says, I can have anything. And it puts us into that positive frame of mind. And that in itself is the shift that we find in our body that makes us healthier.
I was taught 3 questions that you ask yourself every morning and every night, and I do it every morning and every night. And it's based, it was a very expensive coaching program, and it's about the first thing you ask yourself is, what am I grateful for? Now that can be your health, it can be anything. But you don't just answer it, you feel it. You lay there when you wake up in the morning and feel it. My thing on my phone says that. The next one is, who do I love and who loves me? And feel that. And then the last one is, what am I excited about today? Or what was? What did I achieve today at the end of the day? Yes. When you do that, you create a frame of mind that you couldn't bash it into the 9 bar. It's all about those love emotions, about forgiveness and gratitude and all the stuff that religions talk about. It's about getting up into the thing, and as Alan said, when you're in that space, all of your endocrine system kicks in and it releases all the good stuff that feeds your body, all the stuff that you want. But when you're not in that headspace, all the shit goes in, and that's when, like I had my smile and all that when I was going through the cancer stuff. They're putting shit in my body. I didn't want to put shit in my body myself. There was already enough shit going into it with chemo and radiation and stuff. But I was the one that had to choose to stop that stuff. The doctors told me I had to have the other shit. But people don't realise they're in control of that because medical corporations don't teach it and they don't promote it because they can't make money out of it.
Well, maybe we should imagine a future where we all heal ourselves and we don't need to go to the pharmacist, apart from those people who have accidents. I mean, that would be my dream, for sure.
There is 2 sides too. You've got the wellness industry, and it's about wellness, and you've got the sickness industry, which is pharmaceutical companies. Now, we all know, it's common sense. Pharmaceutical companies are major corporations with major investors with one priority, to make money. And they make money out of treating you. 50 years or 80 years or something, they knew that aspirin was the best thing for people that had like heart or like the stuff for brain hemorrhages and stuff. They kept trying to recreate it, and after about 80 years and an untold amount of people dying, they couldn't duplicate it, so they had to go to aspirin. Nearly every single thing on the market is exactly the same. The pharmaceutical companies, and they can't make money if you're well, they can't make money if you're dead. They want to keep you in between, and that's where the medication and treatment, and it's big money.
Oh, that's right. So in terms of getting rid of the pharmaceuticals, that's a big wish.
Well, exactly.
I mean, the way to do that is in the way that we live our lives and what we do, to the point that we don't need them anymore. And
Absolutely.
so it's all the things that you were talking about.
Too. Awareness, like making people aware.
Mm.
Because so many people aren't
It's all
made
about
aware.
awareness.
Yeah.
And the last thing in this project is that, as well as each of us thinking about the world we'd like to have, it's how do we bring all the strands together so we have a collective view. And that's an ongoing conversation. It's not, this is just the beginning of that.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see, you know, a panel with the women in, and probably get one of the women to host it as well, and just have 4 women on here talking about their views as well, and then bringing men and women together again and extend on this. It's, because, you know, every time we get together and we start talking about love and compassion and taking that approach, everybody's talking that way. But the more that we're doing it as a collective, then we might start actually doing it and not just talking about it. It becomes more, you know, the thing that we're doing. It's like, as John had said, you know, asking those 3 questions in the morning, asking 3 questions at night. My, family who are down in Canberra, I had asked the kids, because they seem to be unhappy and everything. I said, well, what are you grateful for? And I asked them each day to come up with at least 3 things I were grateful for. Now when I go down and we sit at the dinner table, my 11-year-old granddaughter, the first thing she asks when we sit down, we're about to eat, is ask each person, what was the best part of your day today? What did you really love about it? So it's become and that meal time is completely changed in its energy.
Yeah, that's great. So
it's in the doing.
It's about changing our habits. It's the personal recognition of what we want, the collective getting together, and then the habits and changing the habits.
And they're old-fashioned values that are gone today, because they get at the table and they do this. You know, like if you're sitting there talking about your day and talking about what was good and great, like that's what they used to do, the last generation. But it's been missed now since bloody Wozniak invented the apple. So
that comes down to marketing strategies used by big companies that we don't have that anymore. You know, like campaigns have been so successful that we don't have the contact. You know, we're addicted to social media. We're addicted to having the new and the greatest thing. You know, and as Johan Hari writes, it's literally the only way we're going to conquer addiction is actually connection. We actually need to go and understand people more, spend more time with people. One of the big things which I'm going to be pushing for is I'm hopefully going to be doing a raise your cheeks campaign. Raise your cheeks. You're smart.
I don't know why I was
you were on
the wrong cheeks.
I told you at the beginning, behave.
Everything is our diet, right? And so I describe my diet as what I watch, what I hear, what I involve myself in, whom I involve myself in. When you start looking at yourself and understanding it's a self journey. It's completely a self journey. The stronger you get yourself, the stronger your community is going to be. So it's about being able to accept yourself enough to be able to take action and not. We were talking about yesterday, but to actually take action and have a crack. You're trying to work on yourself, consistently working on yourself, correct your diet, and then hopefully we can all work together. I'm very much along John's lines of big pharma. I'm very anti. I don't watch TV. I try not to listen to the radio. I think these should be podcasts because these are great conversations. And I think this is the only way in which we're ever going to be able to move forward.
And it's happening.
And that's the whole thing. And I'm just looking at the time, and that's it's got away from us again. But it always happens when we're having great conversations. So thank you very much for the question today, Pauline, and for steering us through and asking us those questions. And thanks, guys, for coming along and doing your homework yesterday. I
was going to say, well done. You all did your homework. It's very good.
Because everybody who's listening, we had a panel discussion the other day, and both John and Scott were on that. And I told them, remember today's one. And I said, well, have you done your homework? And they went, what homework? So I shot them through the questions. They got their thoughts going. But again, as I was saying on all these panel discussions, I'd really love for everybody who's listening to get your comments and your thoughts about it, and ask questions of the panelists as well. Let's just not have something that you listen to and then forget about. But as Pauline was just saying, if we can get these conversations and keep getting them going and moving along, we're then going to, as in our own thoughts, we're going to become the people that we want to become, which therefore becomes the society that we want around us as well. So if we're working along those lines, then that's the best way to go. But Pauline, John and Scott, thank you very much for being here today. As usual.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, John.
Thanks,
Scott.
It's always fun. Thing is, most people will notice every time it's John's on, I've got to keep him in line because he likes to misbehave. I got to tell everybody, he was giving me a hard time before we even started the talk earlier on, which is not normal. But yeah, and that's one thing what I love about it. We joke, we talk about serious things, but we're doing it a light-hearted and respectful way, and we're having a lot of fun with it. And that's the whole thing. If we're enjoying our life and laughing a lot more and smiling, we're all going to feel better.
Well, interesting if I did a live today on my Facebook post, which is about laughter as an energy for business. So have a look at that.
Excellent. We'll do that. I'll actually find the link for that. And if you like, I'll put it into the Campfire as well. Or you can just grab the link yourself and whack it straight into the Campfire for us. It'd be great.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic. And we must continue this conversation and gather other people's views.
Definitely, because we've had over 70 people who have now had chats with me on one-on-one. This is the 40th panel that we've actually run. So I'm really happy with that. And I'd love to see more people jumping in and sharing their wisdom, first of all, in the one-on-ones and then joining the panels and then being able to share the projects and other things that they're running and help to grow a better society and community. But to you three guys again, thanks very much for being here. And to everybody who's been listening in, thank you very much. And we'll see you on the next Campfire chat, whether it's a one-on-one or a panel, either way. Bye for now.